the boundaries of Matthew Warchus's imagination and the scope of this seem to be really quite limitless. Is this the pose? Is this what she does? And she's like, Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you are meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre, and this is my Stagey YouTube channel where I review shows that I have been invited to go and see, and I talk about stagey news and gossip and drama happening in the theatre industry worldwide, West End and Broadway predominantly. But today, I am not going to be talking about a show at all. I am, however, going to be telling you about something stagey adjacent because I have literally just got back from a UK Gala screening of Matilda. The Matilda the Musical movie. So this is coming out imminently in UK cinemas. If it isn't out already, I haven't been paying nearly enough attention. And it's coming out next month globally on Netflix as well. And I was so lucky to be invited to a special premiere event screening this evening, which gives you a little bit of insight as to why I am dressed like an ensemble member from a low-budget production of Spring Awakening right now. It's the hair, that's what's driving that metaphor home. But I had a great time at Matilda this evening, and I don't as often talk about movie musicals here on my channel, but I think this is something that a lot of us are very interested in. I've been reacting to the trailers as they have been being released, and I've had a lot of messages from people to make more content around the movie and react to the soundtrack and talk about all of these things. So I've decided what I'm going to do, first of all, having just seen the film tonight, it's just beginning to come out, not many people have had a chance to see it yet, I am going to give you a spoiler-free review. So that's what today's video is. I'm going to be letting you know what I thought of the film in a spoiler-free way. I'm not going to talk about the changes that they've made. I am not going to go through all of that. That video is coming further down the line. So if that is the video you're waiting for, stay tuned, make sure you're subscribed. All of that content is coming before the end of 2022. But today I'm going to be giving you a spoiler-free review, so you can watch this even without having seen the film yet. Now, before I get to my review, if you enjoyed today's video, first of all, make sure you're subscribed to my Stagey YouTube channel. You don't want to miss the rest of my Matilda the Musical, the movie content that is going to be coming here to my channel. Second of all, if you really enjoy it, you can use the super thanks button somewhere down below my face here to give me a tip. That very much helps me as a Stagey content creator. And finally, make sure you are following me on all the other social media platforms as well. I am at Mickey Joe Theatre on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because when you do that, the powers that be think that I'm important and they invite me to premiere events. Literally, I have no idea how this evening happened, but I'm incredibly grateful. Incredibly grateful. Now, let's talk about Matilda, the musical, the movie. So I'm going to be very careful about what I can and can't say in this video, but I really enjoyed this film adaptation. I would say that this is a really strong, lovely version of this show, and I think this is an incredibly special stage production and an incredibly special musical adaptation, and I think the film does justice to that. That's the big question that we're answering here today. Is it good? Is it half decent? It is very good. It is a good film adaptation. It's very different tonally in many places. It's very different just sort of aesthetically. You know, you have some movie musicals that quite religiously adapt the material and don't make any changes and have this visual similarity, this aesthetic similarity to the material that they are adapting. That is not this version at all. It takes quite a different route. We've already seen that in a lot of its casting, but there are extensive changes to the material. More details on those in a upcoming video further down the line, but there are some songs that have been cut. There is one new song, I'm not going to go into the specificities of which, and just generally, I find the whole thing a little bit shifted tonally. Not in a bad way, not in a direction I don't like, but just enough to make it feel suitably different from the stage production. It feels as though they have the songs in common and they have the story in common, but otherwise they do feel like two very different organisms. And that's probably for the best, because the things that make a stage musical work and the things that make a film work are two very different things. And it's interesting that they should be so different because both are directed by the same man, by Matthew Warchus. And what will usually happen is a director will have a certain vision for a character and for some material. And so for him to have that vision and his interpretation of this story and what is important about it, and for that to vary between these two media, that's really interesting to me, that he could realise this story in such a specific way on stage and then achieve such different things with it and take it in such different directions in the film version. Because he does bring out very different traits in each character. And I think I spend a lot of time on here talking about theatre, but on film specifically, you can really pinpoint where a director's priorities lie, because on stage a great many things are happening and they create these entire tableaus, and occasionally they'll pull your focus into one specific point, but you have freedom as an audience member to glance all around the stage. There's a lot of stuff going on. In film, they direct your gaze specifically and they show you the shots that they want in a specific order, and we're cutting to this and we're spending exactly that many seconds on this. The editing process and the filming process and the cinematography and the mise-en-scène is all so calculated and so deliberate, at least with, you know, very strong visionary auteur filmmakers, that you can really infer from that what their priorities are with the stories that they're adapting. And the stage version of Matilda is inherently theatrical. I think the film is inherently cinematic. What I mean by that is it really makes good use of the opportunities it has as a piece of film rather than something that's happening live on stage. I've criticised other movie musicals before for just feeling like a stage production that's being filmed. So Cats, for example, I think has a disappointingly limited scope, because in the stage show Cats, they perform these songs on sort of a makeshift stage area in a junkyard. And in the film, there's a great proportion of the film where they're just singing to each other on a stage in this sort of junkyard theatre type area. And it's so similar. And you think, on a film, you can take us anywhere. You are not bound by the same constraints. We can go anywhere in a film. And Matthew Warchus really takes that to heart with the film version of Matilda here. Because location is quite vague in the stage version. You have this set that is not particularly literal, and obviously on film your locations are going to be more specific. You're going to see where Matilda is rather than her just having these multicoloured letters behind her and darkness and a spotlight. You're going to have to show where she is when she's singing this song, for example. But each of the musical numbers are quite high concept and take us to a lot of these fantastical locations. The boundaries of Matthew Warchus's imagination and the scope of this seem to be really quite limitless. And that is, I think, how I would characterise the entire film. It feels as though he's made a conscious effort with this film for it to be this story, Matilda's story, as seen through the eyes of children and as experienced through a storytelling method that is characterised by the boundless imagination of a child. Because the locations that we visit and the perspectives that it's shot from and just the relationship it has to its storytelling do seem to have this adolescent quality. That's not to say that they're juvenile, it's incredibly sophisticated, but it does have this child's imagination feel to it. And I do think that's a deliberate decision here from Matthew Warchus, and I do think it's a very fitting decision for the film. You know, there are parts where I think for it to be a sophisticated piece of art, perhaps we don't need to linger on a certain joke too much, or some bits do feel a little bit pandering to a younger audience, but then I have to remind myself, and I was reminding myself as I was watching it, that this is a film for children just as much as it is for adults, or perhaps even more than it is for adults. This is a family film, and this has always been a children's story that has just resonated with a wider audience. And it's an important one because it's a story about stories and the power that they have. I have some very specific notes about a few instances of cinematography, but if you want to hear more about those, you will have to wait until my spoiler-containing video review. For now, I will tell you the whole thing is very colourful, very vibrant, very fun. There's a few big numbers with some really great choreography. They have this really extensive children's ensemble that just do the most fun, amazing numbers. There are so many talented kids in this film, like literally hundreds. And the choreographer for the film is the wonderful and talented Kane, who also choreographed on the original staging of the show alongside Peter Darling. I will say, of the songs that have been cut from the film, they do minimise certain parts of the plot, but I don't think this is to the detriment of the overall film. I think the narrative and the areas that they have chosen to stress, both because they spend a little bit more time that is exploring some facets of the plot that they didn't as much in the stage version. You know, we're not looking so much at the wider supporting cast, we're really honing in on those few prominent characters, but also because the running time of the film is just shorter than what a stage musical's running time would be. If anything feels to have grown more prominent in this, it's the relationship between Matilda and Miss Trunchbull, but also the story within a story. I don't think there's more of it than there is in the stage version, the story that she tells about the acrobat and the escapologist, but it does feel as though simply by keeping almost all of that in, that it's given sort of a greater weight. And I'm not meant to be giving you spoilers, and it feels as though I'm getting spoilery, so I'm going to end this conversation. We're going to move on to the next section. I'm going to tell you what I thought about the performances, without spoilers. Gosh, this is difficult. So, I really enjoyed Alisha Weir, who plays Matilda. I've seen a few different actresses play Matilda. They all have that adorable charm. I mean, the whole concept of her being sort of so well-spoken while being tiny is always going to be incredibly endearing. And whether it's just because I'm getting to see her performance on a big screen versus the other ones that were seen from a distance on stage, but I do think she had so many subtleties and nuances to the character that I have not seen before. She does some amazing, very specific things that, again, I'm not going to talk about in this video. I'm going to save them for the next review, but I really enjoy a lot of the detail work that she puts into her performance, which when I'm talking about a child actor, is impeccable and remarkable. But I feel like the bigger question has always been about Emma Thompson's casting as Miss Trunchbull. Controversial, perhaps only for the fact that we are predominantly used to seeing Miss Trunchbull played by a male actor. Played originally in the West End by Bertie Carvel, who won an Olivier Award for his performance and then transferred with the show to Broadway. That's not to say it hasn't been played by a woman in the past. Beth Malone, I believe, of Fun Home has played Miss Trunchbull regionally in the US, and the casting specification has never been explicitly male. There is a height requirement and a suggestion that Trunchbull is neither male nor female, but is just a monster that transcends gender. So the gender is not important, but the wickedness is. And that's something that Emma Thompson really gets. You know, you think of her as being soft and lovable and charming, and I briefly saw her earlier this evening because she stopped in to see us all in the screen that we were watching the film in, and she was all of those things and had such warmth. So it was then striking seeing her performance in the film, because she does abandon so much of what you would associate her with, and I don't think I've ever seen her dig her heels into such malevolence and bullishness before. I think it's really a very different side to her than I've seen previously in any performance. It's further, even if you think of Nanny McPhee as being Emma Thompson at one of her sternest in performance, this is so beyond that, with the level of just indignant anger and rage and even autocratic madness that she descends to. I think we see Trunchbull have much more of an arc in this version of the story than perhaps we see in the stage version, and where she ends up by the end of it is a lot more deranged than I was perhaps anticipating. Now, the singing is what you might expect from Emma Thompson if you've already managed to lower your expectations. I've actually seen Emma Thompson live on stage before. She played Mrs. Lovett in a semi-staged production of Sweeney Todd, so I was not expecting much from her singing. And for the most part, she sings her way through a lot of the songs. She has a few sort of vocal moments, but Matilda is not the kind of score that I need to be knocked out of the park vocally, at least not from Miss Trunchbull as a character. She sings them and executes these songs as capably as she needs to. It's all about the characterization, and that is something that she does deliver in spades. More so than anything else, it just feels like she's having a lot of fun playing Miss Trunchbull. That's what really comes through, and it's that kind of a villain who is still comic enough that they're not just going to be incredibly scary. Think a lot of the sort of earlier Harry Potter villains before it got a little bit dark. Like, she is legitimately threatening enough, but also easy for children to laugh at the same time, and I think that's important. The person I'm most excited to talk to you about is Lashana Lynch. I had no idea what to expect from Lashana Lynch as Miss Honey, and this has been my biggest intrigue this entire time, simply because this is one I do need to be able to knock it out of the park vocally, and not only vocally, but acting through song is so important when you have a song as beautiful and brilliantly conceived as My House. I think this is one of the strongest moments in the stage version of Matilda, the way that all of the parts of the show come together, the way it's staged. I never thought that that could be improved on. The film very possibly proves me wrong in that regard, because this number is delivered so well, and Lashana Lynch generally gives, I would describe it as a revelatory performance. I have only ever seen her in film before getting to be stern and militaristic and playing a superhero, and you don't get to see the softness and the vulnerability, and so I didn't, not at the forefront of my mind was the idea that she was capable of those sorts of things, because it's just so disparate from what we've seen from her in previous performances. And she was wonderful, just gentle and mouseish and exactly everything you would expect Miss Honey to be. And then sang beautifully and soulfully, and I have much more I could say about this performance. I'm going to expand on it in so much more detail in the longer review video that is coming soon. I know I keep teasing this. If you haven't subscribed, you must subscribe, because there are so many things that I'm desperate to say about this, but I don't want to spoil it for you all before you go and see it in the cinema. Watch this, subscribe to my channel, go see the film, come back to me, and by then, hopefully, I will have made the longer review video that goes into all of the details that we desperately want to talk about. I have some more thoughts about the rest of the supporting cast. I'll go into more specifics with those in the longer video, but there's no one whose performance sticks out to me as not being great. And that alone is a success, I think, in a movie musical, because so often we have at least that one person who we think, why were you cast in that role? And there's not like a lot of singing that needs to be done by anyone other than the three that I've already mentioned. The rest of it is generally down to the kids, and the kids in this film are fantastic. I have never been the biggest fan in the world of children and musical theatre, but I think I've mellowed and softened over the past few years, because they keep getting me emotionally. I keep being won over by these kid-heavy shows and film adaptations. I thought it was just wonderful, and when they're delivering the choreography and some of these really fun numbers, I mean, you see a lot of it in the trailer, but it's absolutely winning, and that captures the feel and the vibe and the intention of the film in those moments. It feels like those are why this film is being made, and that's the whole spirit of it. If you could characterize The Greatest Showman, the spirit of that film is "This is me," and that's the defining moment of this film. There are numbers in this one like When I Grow Up and like Bruce and Revolting Children, and they feel like they are the spirit of this film. I will also, again without giving you details, say there are so many stagey cameos to watch out for, specifically in the first 5 minutes of the film. There's some dubious period appropriate wigs going on, so they're not always the easiest to recognise all of these musical theatre actors, but there are so many. Some that have been historically associated with this show, and others that haven't necessarily, but lots of MT actors to watch out for in the beginning. Something else I will say is predominantly it just feels so different from the 90s film adaptation. Like that, I have always thought bears a certain amount of similarity to the stage musical. They're obviously both based on the same book, but set in different places because the 90s film was Americanized. And the stage musical bears a strong resemblance to the book, and this bears a resemblance to the book and to the stage musical. But of all of the different properties, this film and the 90s film feel the most disparate and the furthest apart. Tonally, and honestly, the story even feels, just because they emphasize such different things, it feels like two very different interpretations, which is what it is, of the Matilda story. They bear very little resemblance, and I think that's a good thing, because people compared it with that already just when this film project was announced. When it was announced they were doing a film adaptation of the Matilda musical, people were quick to invoke the 90s film that was very iconic and memorable, and they said, why are we making it? We already have this version. And they are completely different. Not only does this one have all of the songs and the different sensibility because it's set in the UK and everyone has English accents, but like I said, the way they prioritize different parts of the story, and predominantly this story within a story mechanic that we know from the stage version, that's what really sets the two apart and makes them feel totally different. I think the thing you'll be most pleased to hear is that I just wasn't disappointed, and I am a really big fan of Matilda, and I think it's an exceptional stage musical. I think it's wonderful and creative and one of the best things that's been created in the UK. I think the score is one of the strongest. You know how I feel about it deserving that Tony Award. I'm sorry, Kinky Boots, I'm bringing it up again. Tim Minchin was robbed of the Tony Award. Matilda was the best score that year and one of the best scores for the past 2 decades. You get to enjoy all of the cleverness of that. It's pretty faithfully adapted into the film. There are the occasional changes, more so for certain characters than others, but there were no moments where I thought, oh gosh, this is really good in the show, I kind of wish it was better. Here, everything is sufficiently different, or where it's similar, done to a similar level of quality, that it didn't have me hearkening for the stage production, which is something I've done an awful lot before when watching various film adaptations. I'm not going to name any specifically. Into the Woods. So if nothing else, I hope that eases any concerns that anyone might have. There are going to be differences, and I am going to do a video talking about these at length. I would like to try and see the film one more time before I do, just so I can try and pick up on every single specific thing. It's also been a few years since I have seen the stage version in the West End. I have a pretty ridiculously good memory, but I would like to be able to hone in on every little shifted detail, and there are an awful lot. So please do not go to this expecting a completely faithful, identical film adaptation of the stage show. It has been changed, but all of the trajectories of the characters and the narrative and the most important songs to drive that narrative, those are all retained. So that has been my spoiler-free review of Matilda, the musical, the movie. Like I said, I have many more videos in the pipeline. I would like to do one where I sit down and react to the soundtrack from this new film version of the musical, because having just heard the songs tonight for the first time, I have so many thoughts, and I would like to go back over and work out where some of the lyric changes are, and where some of the structural changes are, and where some of the rhythmic changes are. There's a lot of interesting things that have happened, not throughout the score, but just occasional moments. And I am going to do the other 2 videos I have promised you as well. A longer, spoiler-heavy review of the film. I want to give more people in the UK and the US the chance to watch it first, so that is not coming just yet, but it will be coming soon. And I'm also going to talk to you about all of the differences between the stage version and the film, of which there are an awful lot. If there's any other Matilda content that you would like to see here on my channel, let me know in the comments section down below. I'm also hoping to go back and see the show soon. I know that they have a new cast that I haven't gone and reviewed yet. I don't think I've ever reviewed the Matilda stage musical here on my channel, so I'll make sure to get to that as well. But if you do have any other ideas for content that you would like to see related to the Matilda movie, let me know in the comments section down below. And thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you've subscribed to my stage YouTube channel so you don't miss the rest of my Matilda the Musical the Movie content. Oh, if I had a penny for every time I'd had to say that. As a reminder, if you really enjoyed the video, you can use the super thanks button down below to give me a stagey tip. That very much helps me to make so much regular content as a stagey content creator. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!